Okay, I need to start with one very important question for all Russians now. Will you, like a special person with your own experience, will you share your experience with those who will look for Russian war criminals soon?
Well, let me make one thing clear. So far, no one has asked me to do that. And it's an interesting question. Depends on the circumstances. Depends on who does it, how are they doing it, are they doing it correctly, are they doing it the right way. But so far, no one has approached me. Even though a colleague of mine, who is the head of the office that I worked for in Washington as a researcher, he was chosen by the U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland, to begin investigating Russian war crimes.
In this moment,
you have to remember something. I'm not a lawyer.
It must be lawyer.
It's important that there be lawyers who are doing this. My expertise was facilitating getting people on trial, but you don't have to be a lawyer to do that. I'm a historian.
But at first you, then a lawyer.
First
step is your step.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Now we listen to you and we're thinking about our future, like Russian citizens too. I know that some states refuse to cooperate with the Nazi hunters.
Right.
Can you explain why?
Normally because they don't want to be identified as being responsible for Nazi war crimes. They don't want people to know the extent of the crimes committed by their people. And politically, many people don't want these trials to take place. So there are people like Tudjman in Croatia, who was the first president of Croatia, who although he fought against the Ustasha, against the Nazi collaborators, he became a fanatic Croatian nationalist, and that's how he won the election. But, I mean, his brother was murdered by the Ustasha. You would assume that he would want people who committed Ustasha crimes to be brought to justice, but that wasn't the case.
But what's in the end of this story?
Listen, at the beginning, in the middle, and in the end, it's politics. That's the problem. It's not justice, it's politics, to a large extent.
And how did you work with politics in this case?
I needed allies. I needed local people who wanted the criminals to be put on trial, who could help us and fight from the native country, from the country where the crimes were committed, opposite their government. And I needed press. I needed the help of the media. And as a matter of fact, the media was one of the best allies that I had. But there were countries in which no one from the media wanted to help me because they're all patriots.
For example?
Lithuania. Not a single Lithuanian journalist was willing to press the government to bring to trial the Lithuanians. 14 of them returned to Lithuania from the United States. In the United States, they were tried for immigration violations and naturalization violations. The infrastructure for a trial was already done in America. All they had to do was put these people on trial and prosecute them. They put 2 on trial, but they made sure that they were never punished.
Nobody from Lithuania.
There were 3 trials.
Only 3 trials?
In independent Lithuania, yeah. Mm-hmm. No, many people were tried in Lithuania after the war by the Soviets. And as I said, that's the only good thing you can say about the Soviet Union, that they brought many, many Nazi collaborators to justice. But by the way, not in every case did they say that the person murdered Jews. In other words, in some places they said Soviet citizens of Jewish nationality. In some places they just said Soviet citizens. But they were murdered because they were Jews. That's the reason they were murdered.
As I understand, anyone can be found. You have found even Mengele.
I found him dead, though.
But you found him.
Yeah.
But why did Israel begin this work? If German government...
I'm not Israel. I'm not the state of Israel. I'm the Simon Wiesenthal Center, an NGO. The state of Israel has not done anything in recent years to bring Nazis to justice for a wide variety of reasons. And to be perfectly honest, Israel has not had one day of peace from the minute in 1948 when it was established. And when you have an enemy like the Islamic State of Iran that wants to destroy you, I think it's far more important to worry about the Islamic bomb, in other words, an Iranian nuclear bomb, than to worry about an elderly Nazi.
Is it your personal war?
To some extent it is, but I always tried not to make it personal. In other words, I don't think it's right to make it personal. So for my family, some of my family was killed by Lithuanians apparently in Lithuania. I'm named for my great uncle, who's a great Talmud scholar. His wife, his kids were murdered. But from the very beginning, I felt that if I make this a personal thing, it'll ruin my life. It'll ruin my life, okay? Not to ruin the life of the Nazis. They're the ones whose lives should be ruined. But to some extent, in Lithuania, it became a little more personal than it should have been.
You speak about Lithuania. You worked with Ruta Vanagaitė, who wrote a book about the crimes committed by the Holocaust.
1 second, she wrote it with me.
Yeah, of course. It's the key.
Yeah.
But the Lithuanians did not accept it. People don't want the truth, as I understand.
Listen,
or why?
Listen, many people bought that book. 20,000 copies of the book were sold. 20,000, okay?
All over the world.
No, in Lithuania. Only in Lithuania.
In small
of the Lithuanian edition. It was the most read book in public libraries for 3 months, for 3 years, excuse me. And for 4 months, it was #1 on the bestseller list. So people read the book.
She must go outside because
Right.
bullying and hate around her.
She was surrounded by hate.
Why?
Because she told the Lithuanians the truth. We told the Lithuanians the truth that they didn't want to hear. They can't live with it. How can you atone for the murder of 212,000 of your own citizens who had committed no crime, who were an important part of the society, who contributed to the society, some of whom fought for Lithuania in the wars of independence, 1918, served in the Lithuanian army? How can you explain a thing like that? It's totally outrageous, totally outrageous. And there's no forgiveness for that. And there never will be forgiveness. But today, it's not a question of forgiveness, because the people who are alive today are not the people who committed the crimes.
Of course.
So we don't hold the children and grandchildren guilty. They're not guilty. But they have a responsibility to admit what happened.
Did the Jews themselves consider punishing criminals if it was obvious that they would not be punished in their native countries, like in Lithuania?
There were at least 2 groups of Jews after World War II who sought to revenge the crimes of the Nazis and killed Nazis. One group was a group of survivors, headed by a man named Abba Kovner, who was a very famous poet and a very charismatic leader who was from Vilna. And he was a partisan in the forests. And he, together with his fellow partisans, went after the Nazis. There was even a plan to try and poison a SS camp, a camp of SS prisoners. And there was another group of soldiers who had Israeli soldiers from Palestine who served in the British Army and remained in Europe after the war in order to do 2 things: to help Jews flee from Eastern Europe to the DP camps, displaced persons camps in Germany and Austria, and to take revenge on the Nazis. There's a book that just was written about it, but we don't really know all the details of the operations. All I can tell you is it says something about Judaism. We devoted all our energies to building a state of Israel rather than killing Nazis. Every time there's a trial, these people are worried that they'll be brought to trial. So they don't live a tranquil life. They don't know what's going to happen.
Like Mengele.
Like Mengele, like Shakic. One day there'll be a knock on the door, you're Dinko Shakic. That's what we can do. We can ruin their lives. We can try and ruin their lives. And we've done it. We've done it in quite a few cases where the people in the end were not brought to trial, but they were put in jail for time. They were exposed. By the way, the worst...
Is it enough for punishment?
Listen to me. The worst thing for these people is when they're exposed. When the world knows, when their families find out what they did. That is the worst thing for them. I can tell you a story about a Hungarian who murdered a young Jewish boy, 18 years old, who he caught on a tram in Budapest without the yellow star, and he ran away to Australia. And when we found him, and he was interviewed by Australian TV, right before they were going to announce that he was alive and living in Hungary, so they asked him, "Is there anything else you want to say for the interview?" He said, "Yes, don't tell my family." He's about to be exposed on national television. Trust me, that's the most painful thing for them. Because they have no conscience. They're never sorry. They have no empathy for the victims. There's a movie now called Final Account by Luke Holland, a British director. He interviewed dozens and dozens of Germans who served in the Wehrmacht, who served in the SS, and they're not a single one. A few of them said that Hitler might have been a mistake, but not a single one expressed any empathy for the victims. I mean, that's what I saw in the film. I don't know how many people he interviewed. Maybe someone else said it, but not one, not one.
I was shocked yesterday during a lecture. Then you told that no one tells sorry.
Right. No one says they're sorry. Because they're not sorry. In order to live with what they did, they have to think that they did the right thing. It's like they've been brainwashed.
Yesterday you had a question about age. If this person is so old, he lived long life, 50 or 60 years after the war, do you think he must be in jail?
If
After
I
all these
found the
years,
person who murdered your grandfather, would you want him brought to justice? Of course you would, because he murdered your grandfather. Every single one of these people murdered someone's grandfather, someone's mother, someone's niece or nephew or son or daughter. All of them are murderers, either directly or indirectly. They had no sympathy for their victims. The passage of time doesn't change anything. They're just as guilty today as they were when they committed the crime. They're the last people on earth who deserve any sympathy because they had no sympathy for their victims, some of whom were even older than they are today.
How is it possible to find now somebody after so many years?
Most of them didn't change their names even. They thought, no, who's going to look for the police chief in Kaidan, Lithuania, or in Vaiguva, or in Dvinsk in Latvia, or Rezekne, or Tukums?
Is it become easier with all this new stuff, internet, special programs for faces?
Yes, I use Facebook, I use Twitter, of course.
You use social networks,
I use
and
social
special
media.
Programs for find face?
No, that's not important. We can find them, and we've found many survivors and we found many criminals. And we offered money also for information.
Did especially you find the Demyanenko?
No. It wasn't me. It's the Americans. The office that I worked for, but I wasn't the person who did it.
Is it the last big success of your office last years? I don't know.
The biggest success was Shakic, no question. He was the last living concentration camp commander. The victories we had now with Schutz, who guarded Sachsenhausen, convicted at age 101, Bruno Day from Stutthof, Futschner from Stutthof. We helped them. We helped the prosecution. We do whatever we can. Any justice is better than no justice.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We operated in Russia for 12 years, and the government tried to get rid of us 3 times.
We had to leave, forced out of the country by new repressive laws after the first week of the war. Our freedom crushed by the authorities.
Мы временно приостанавливаем работу телеканала. We survived, started working from Europe, and now we are watched by millions of people every day.
There's no other independent news channel in Russian. We have now decided to tell the truth about Russia in English as well.
So that you could get news about Russia, the war in Ukraine, and Russian society directly from the source.
We want to tell you firsthand what is really happening in Russia. Subscribe to TV Rain Newsroom on YouTube and let's take a look at our future together.